Master now takes his seat in the east, and requests candidates to stand before him. Historical account. Worshipful Master. Brother Gab, the second section of this degree exemplifies an instance of virtue, fortitude, and integrity seldom equaled, if ever excelled, in the history of man. You have this evening represented one of the greatest men, and perhaps the greatest Mason, the world ever knew, viz. Our Grand Master, Hiram Abiff, who was slain just before the completion of King Solomon's temple. His death was premeditated by 15 fellow crafts, who, seeing the temple about to be completed, and being desirous of obtaining the secrets of the Master Mason, whereby they might travel in foreign countries and receive Master's wages, entered into a horrid conspiracy to extort them from our Grand Master, Hiram Abiff, or take his life. But, reflecting with horror on the atrocity of the crime, 12 of them recanted. The other 3 persisted in their murderous designs. Our Grand Master, Hiram Abiff, was slain at high 12. It was his usual practice at that hour, while the craft were called from labor to refreshment, to enter into the unfinished sanctum sanctorum, or Holy of Holies, of the temple, and there offer up his adorations to the deity, and draw his designs on the trestle board. The 3 fellow crafts who persisted in their murderous designs, knowing this to be his usual practice, placed themselves at the south, west, and east gates of the inner courts of the temple, and there awaited his return. Our Grand Master, Hiram Abiff, having finished his usual exercises, attempted to retire by the south gate, when he was accosted by Jubela, who thrice demanded of him the secrets of the Master Mason, or the Master's word, and, on his being refused, gave him a blow with the 24-inch gauge across his throat, upon which he fled and attempted to pass out at the west gate, where he was accosted by Jubelo, who, in like manner, demanded of him the secrets of the Master Mason, or the Master's word, and, on his being refused, gave him a blow with the square across his breast, upon which he fled, and attempted to make his escape out at the east gate, where he was accosted by Jubilam, who, in like manner, thrice demanded the secrets of the Master Mason, or the Master's word, and, on his like refusal, gave him a violent blow with the setting maul on his forehead, which felled him dead on the spot. The ruffians buried the body in the rubbish of the temple until low 12, or 12 at night, when they met by agreement and carried it a westerly course from the temple, to the brow of a hill west of Mount Mori, where they buried it in a grave dug due east and west, 6 feet, perpendicular, at the head of which they planted an acacia, in order to conceal it, and that the place might be known, should occasion ever require, and made their escape. Our Grand Master, Hiram Abiff, was found to be missing on the following day. His absence was discovered by there being no designs drawn on the trestle board. King Solomon, believing him to be indisposed, ordered strict search and due inquiry to be made for him through the several apartments of the temple, that he might be found, if possible. But nothing could be seen or heard of him. Then, fearing some accident had befallen him, the king ordered the several rolls of the workmen to be called, and there appeared to be 3 missing, namely, Jubela, Jubelo, and Jubilam, who, from the similarity of their names, were supposed to be brothers and men from Tyre. About this time, the 12 fellow crafts, who had recanted from their murderous designs, appeared before King Solomon, clothed in white gloves and aprons, in token of their innocence, acknowledging their premeditated guilt, and, kneeling, implored his pardon. King Solomon then ordered them to divide themselves into parties, and travel 3 east, 3 west, 3 north, and 3 south, and that they should, with others whom he should appoint, go in search of the ruffians. The 3 that pursued the westerly course, coming down near the port of Joppa, met with a seafaring man, of whom they made inquiry, if he had seen any strangers pass that way. He informed them that he had 3, who, from their appearance, were workmen from the temple, seeking a passage into Ethiopia, but not having King Solomon's pass, were not allowed to obtain one, and had returned back into the country. They returned and bore this information to King Solomon, who ordered them to disguise themselves and travel as before, with positive instructions to find the ruffians and with as positive assurance that, if they did not, they 12 should he deemed the murderers, and suffer severely for the crime committed. They travelled as before, and after 15 days of weary travel and hardships, one of the brethren, being more weary than the rest, sat down on the brow of a hill, west of Mount Mori, to rest and refresh himself, and, on attempting to rise, caught hold of an acacia, which easily giving way, excited his curiosity. Upon examination they found it to be a grave. About this time a party arrived with the ruffians, and related that while sitting down to rest and refresh themselves, they heard the following horrid exclamations from the clefts of an adjacent rock. The first was the voice of Jubella, exclaiming, "Oh, that my throat had been cut across," etc., etc. The second was the voice of Jubello, exclaiming, "Oh, that my body had been cut in two," etc., etc. The third was the voice of Jubilam, exclaiming, "Oh, that my body had been cut in two," etc., etc. Upon which they rushed in, seized, bound, and brought them before King Solomon, who, after a due conviction of their guilt, ordered them to be taken without the gates of the courts of the temple, and executed according to the several imprecations upon their own heads. King Solomon then ordered the 12 fellow crafts to go in search of the body, and, if found, to observe whether the master's word, or a key to it, or anything appertaining to the master's degree, was on or about it. The body of our Grand Master, Hiram Abiff, was found in a westerly course from the temple, where our weary brothers sat down to rest and refresh themselves. On removal of the earth, they came to the body of our Grand Master, Hiram Abiff, which they found in a high state of putrefaction, and in a mutilated and mangled condition, it having been buried already 15 days, the effluvia which arose from it compelled them to place involuntarily their hands thus. Master here places his hands in form of a due regard of a master mason, which alludes to the manner in which his hands were placed when he took the oath of a master mason, to guard their nostrils, but nothing was found on or about the body excepting the jewel of his office, by which his body was easily discovered. King Solomon then ordered them to go and assist in raising the body, and it was agreed between him and Hiram, king of Tyre, that as the master's word was then lost, the first sigh given at the grave, and the first word spoken after the body should be raised, should be used for the regulation of all masters' lodges, until future generations should find out the right one. They repaired to the grave, when King Solomon ordered one of the fellow crafts to take the body by the entered apprentice grip, and see if it could be raised. But, on account of its high state of decomposition, it could not be raised, the flesh cleaved from the bone. King Solomon then ordered them to take it by the fellow craft grip. But on trial, for the reason before given, the fellow craft's grip failed to benefit any. It could not be raised. King Solomon then exclaimed, "O Lord my God, I fear the master's word is forever lost. My brother of Tyre, what shall we do? Let us pray." After prayer, King Solomon took the body by the strong grip of a master mason, or lion's paw, and raised it on the 5 points of fellowship, which have been explained to you. The body was then carried to the temple for a more decent burial, and was interred in due form. The body of our Grand Master was buried 3 times, first, in the rubbish of the temple, secondly, on the brow of a hill west of Mount Mori, and, thirdly and lastly, as near the Sanctum Sanctorum, or Holy of Holies, of King Solomon's temple, as the Jewish law would permit. And Masonic tradition informs us that there was erected to his memory a Masonic monument, consisting of a beautiful virgin, weeping over a broken column. Before her was a book open. In her right hand a sprig of acacia, in her left an urn. Behind her stands Time, unfolding and counting the ringlets of her hair. The beautiful virgin weeping over the broken column denotes the unfinished state of the temple, likewise the untimely death of our Grand Master, Hiram Abiff. The book open before her, that his virtues lay on perpetual record. The sprig of acacia in her right hand, the divinity of the body. The urn in her left, that his ashes were therein safely deposited, under the Sanctum Sanctorum, or Holy of Holies, of King Solomon's temple. Time, unfolding the ringlets of her hair, denoted that time, patience, and perseverance accomplish all things. The Master now gives and explains to the candidate the several signs and tokens of this degree, commencing with the first and ending with the grips. The Master next calls the candidate's attention to the 3 Grand Masonic pillars, usually delineated a master's carpet. A master's carpet is a large map that lodges generally keep, which is highly embellished with Masonic emblems. Master, pointing to these pillars, says, "These are called the 3 Grand Masonic columns or pillars, and are designated wisdom, strength, and beauty. The pillar of wisdom represents Solomon, king of Israel, whose wisdom contrived the mighty fabric. The pillar of strength, Hiram, king of Tyre, who strengthened Solomon in his grand undertaking. The pillar of beauty, Hiram Abiff, the widow's son, whose cunning craft and curious workmanship beautified and adorned the temple. The construction of this grand edifice was attended with two remarkable circumstances. From Josephus we learn that although 7 years were occupied in building it, yet, during the whole time, it rained not in the daytime, that the workmen might not be obstructed in their labor, and from sacred history it appears that there was neither the sound of hammer, nor axe, nor any tool of iron, heard in the house while it was building. This famous fabric was supported by 1,453 columns, and 2,906 pilasters, all hewn from the finest Parian marble. There were employed in its building 3 grand masters, 3,300 masters, or overseers of the work, 80,000 fellow crafts, or hewers on the mountains and in the quarries, and 70,000 emptied apprentices, or bearers of burdens. All these were classed and arranged in such a manner, by the wisdom of Solomon, that neither envy, discord, nor confusion was suffered to interrupt that universal peace and tranquility which pervaded the world at that important period. Brother Gab, 7 constitute a lodge of entered apprentices, 1 master mason, and 6 entered apprentices. They usually meet on the ground floor of King Solomon's temple. 5 constitute a lodge of fellow crafts, 2 master masons, and 3 fellow crafts. They usually meet in the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple. 3 constitute a lodge of master masons, 3 master masons. They meet in the sanctum sanctorum, or holy of holies of King Solomon's temple. The master either reads or repeats the following from a monitor, which by many is committed to memory. But when he has the work, for example, that part which is not monitorial, it is not necessary that he should commit to memory what is called the master's carpet of emblems, but as it is a part of the initiation of the 3rd degree, the author proposes to give it in its regular order of lodge business. The 3 steps, usually delineated upon the master's carpet, are emblematical of the 3 principal stages of human life, viz. Youth, manhood, and age. In youth, in entered apprentices, we ought industriously to occupy our minds in the attainment of useful knowledge. In manhood, as fellow crafts, we should apply our knowledge to the discharge of our respective duties to God, our neighbors, and ourselves, so that in age, as master masons, we may enjoy the happy reflections consequent on a well-spent life, and die in the hope of a glorious immortality. The pot of incense is an emblem of a pure heart, which is always an acceptable sacrifice to the deity. And as this glows with fervent heat, so should our hearts continually glow with gratitude to the great and beneficent author of our existence, for the manifold blessings and comforts we enjoy. The beehive is an emblem of industry, and recommends the practice of that virtue to all created beings, from the highest seraph in heaven to the lowest reptile of the dust. It teaches us that, as we come into the world rational and intelligent beings, so we should ever be industrious ones, never sitting down contented while our fellow creatures around us are in want, when it is in our power to relieve them without inconvenience to ourselves. When we take a survey of nature, we view man, in his infancy, more helpless and indigent than the brute creation. He lies languishing for days, months, and years, totally incapable of providing sustenance for himself, of guarding against the attack of the wild beasts of the forest, or sheltering himself from the inclemencies of the weather. It might have pleased the great Creator of heaven and earth to have made man independent of all other beings. But, as dependence is one of the strongest bonds of society, mankind were made dependent on each other for protection and security, as they thereby enjoy better opportunities of fulfilling the duties of reciprocal love and friendship. Thus was man formed for social and active life, the noblest part of the work of God. And he that will so demean himself as not to be endeavoring to add to the common stock of knowledge and understanding, may be deemed a drone in the hive of nature, a useless member of society, and unworthy of our protection as Masons. The Book of Constitutions, guarded by the tilled sword, reminds us that we should be ever watchful and guarded in our thoughts, words, and actions, particularly when before the enemies of Masonry, ever bearing in remembrance those truly Masonic virtues, silence and circumspection. The sword pointing to a naked heart. demonstrates that justice will sooner or later overtake us. And although our thoughts, words, and actions may be hidden from the eyes of man, yet that all-seeing eye, whom the sun, moon, and stars obey, and under whose watchful care even comets perform their stupendous revolutions, beholds the inmost recesses of the human heart, and will reward us according to our works. The anchor and ark are emblems of a well-grounded hope in a well-spent life. They are emblematical of that divine ark which safely bears us over this tempestuous sea of troubles, and that anchor which shall safely moor us in a peaceful harbor, where the wicked cease from troubling, and the weary shall find rest. The 47th problem of Euclid. This was an invention of our ancient friend and brother, the great Pythagoras, who, in his travels through Asia, Africa, and Europe, was initiated into several orders of priesthood, and raised to the sublime degree of a master mason. This wise philosopher enriched his mind abundantly in a general knowledge of things, and more especially in geometry or masonry. On this subject he drew out many problems and theorems, and, among the most distinguished he erected this, which in the joy of his heart he called Eureka, in the Grecian language signifying, I have found it, and upon the discovery of which he is said to have sacrificed a hecatomb. It teaches masons to be general lovers of the arts and sciences. The hourglass is an emblem of human life. Behold how swiftly the sands run, and how rapidly our lives are drawing to a close. We cannot without astonishment behold the little particles which are contained in this machine, how they pass away almost imperceptibly, and yet, to our surprise, in the short space of an hour they are all exhausted. Thus wastes man. Today he puts forth the tender leaves of hope. Tomorrow blossoms, and bears his blushing honours thick upon him. The next day comes a frost, which nips the shoot, and, when he thinks his greatness still aspiring, he falls, like autumn leaves, to enrich our Mother Earth. The scythe is an emblem of time, which cuts the brittle thread of life, and launches us into eternity. Behold what havoc the scythe of time makes among the human race, if by chance we should escape the numerous evils incident to childhood and youth, and with health and vigor arrive at the years of manhood, yet withal we must soon be cut down by the all-devouring scythe of time, and be gathered into the land where our fathers have gone before us. Brother Gab, permit me to call your attention to the last emblem on the carpet. The spade, setting maul, coffin, grave, and sprig of acacia. The spade, which dug the grave of our Grand Master, may soon dig ours. The setting maul, which terminated his earthly existence, may be among the casualties which will, sooner or later, terminate ours. The coffin, which received his remains, may soon receive ours. The grave, that abode for the dead, may soon be our grave. The acacia, that evergreen which once marked the temporary resting place of the illustrious dead, that bloomed and flourished at the head of our Grand Master's grave, and was the cause of its timely discovery, is an emblem of our faith in the immortality of the soul, which never dies. This, my brother, may soon designate our last resting place in that everlasting and silent abode, that haven of rest, that peaceful home, where the wicked cease from troubling, and the weary are at rest. Brother, be ever mindful of that great change, when we shall be called from labours on earth to that everlasting refreshment in the paradise of God. Let me admonish you, in the most serious manner, in reference to the close of life, that, when the cold winter of death shall have passed, and the bright summer morn of the resurrection appears, the Sun of Righteousness shall descend and send forth his angels to collect our ransomed dead. Then, if we are found worthy, by the benefit of his pass, we shall gain a ready admission into that celestial lodge above, where the Supreme Architect of the universe presides, where we shall see the King in the beauty of holiness, and with him enter into an endless eternity. Some masters add the following: thus, brother, we close our lecture on the emblems with the solemn thought of death. We are all born to die. We follow our friends to the brink of the grave, and, standing on the shore of a vast ocean, we gaze with exquisite anxiety until the last struggle is over, and we see them sink into the fathomless abyss. We feel our own feet sliding from the precarious brink on which we stand, and a few more suns, and we will be whelmed neath death's awful wave, to rest in the stilly shades, and darkness said silence will reign around our melancholy abode. But is this the end of man, and of the aspiring hopes of all faithful masons? No. Blessed be God, we pause not our feet at the first or second step, but, true to our principles, look forward for greater light. As the embers of mortality are faintly glimmering in the sockets of existence, the Bible removes the dark cloud, draws aside the sable curtains of the tomb, bids hope and joy rouse us, and sustains and cheers the departing spirit. It points beyond the silent grave, and bids us turn our eyes with faith and confidence upon the opening scenes of our eternity. The worshipful master gives 3 raps with his gavel, which brings the whole lodge to their feet.